morning, Fargo. It's great to be here, especially this time of year. As Michael said, my name is Douglas Hanson. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I grew up in western North Dakota and romped around the Badlands and the Killdeer Mountains, the Little Missouri River bottoms, Black Hills in South Dakota. And while I left nearly 40 years ago, I remained connected to the state. I bought the family farm up near Minot, and I more recently joined the advisory board at the architecture department at North Dakota State University. Like most of us, the environment that I grew up in impacts us for the rest of our life. I remember the honest and hardworking people, the connection to the land, the seasons, and that defines me today. I still wake up when the sun wakes up. My body shuts down when the sun goes down, although I don't get to shut down. So those are still a big part of my life. The characteristics of the local vernacular architecture and its simple shapes, its connection to the earth, its limited use of materials, are all showing up in my work today. The churches, the grain silos, the water towers, these are all a big part of my work and quite honestly made me the architect that I am today. I always wanted to be an architect. So as a young child, I built the snow forts and the tree houses, the little villages in the driveway. And it occurred to me that a lot of the shapes that I just talked about and the characteristics of those buildings excuse me, were embedded in those early creations. My attention to these familiar shapes also made me look afar. And when I first saw the John Hancock building, it exaggerated my interest and love for the built environment. The Great Plains really inspired me to go out and study architecture and has stuck through me through my career and some great adventures. Once I completed my studies, I left the Great Plains and applied to work at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, the firm that designed and built the John Hancock building. I was offered the job and moved to Chicago. Shortly after arriving in Chicago, I was assigned to 3 large projects in London, and I was in the London office for the next 3 or 4 years working on those projects. Once I completed the projects in London, I was assigned to a large project in Barcelona, Spain. This ended up being a collaboration between SOM and Frank Gehry. And I was really impressed at the time that Bruce Graham, who was the architect of the John Hancock building, would invite another international architect into our project. So it was a really meaningful collaboration. It was also meaningful for me in that I left, Frank offered me a job, so I finished the project in his Santa Monica studio and moved to Los Angeles, California. The next project I was assigned to was the Guggenheim Museum Bilbao. The Guggenheim Museum Bilbao is one of contemporary architecture's most successful buildings. It was designed by the now world-renowned architect, my mentor and former boss, Frank Gehry. As project architect, I traveled between I traveled between Bilbao, Los Angeles, and New York, and witnessed firsthand how local knowledge and global expertise could produce some amazing results. In a short 5 years, we completed this $150 million project on schedule and on budget. It turned Bilbao, once the small industrial city on the north of Spain, into an international destination. It projected 500,000 visitors per year, and they ended up with over 1 million visitors per year. The economic impact, along with the cultural and the architecture and the technology we used to build the building, set the bar very high for contemporary architecture. But Bilbao is more than the published story. It's really the story of a collaboration. The collaboration between an architect, a community, and a group a small group of individuals that were committed and really had an idea that they needed to push forward. Not so unlike what we have potentially here in the Upper Great Plains. Remember, it was remote, it was not in the cultural center of Europe, and it wasn't on the map. Historically, Bilbao's economy was based on shipbuilding and the coal industry. But when the factories no longer could keep up with technology, they closed. And at the same time, there was a collaboration in the works between the Guggenheim Museum in New York, led by Thomas Krenz, and the Basque Country. Locally, there was a lot of support for this project, but there was also much dissent and many protests. They couldn't believe that the government was going to invest millions and millions of dollars in an institution versus rebuilding their factory. They overcame their differences, and the museum moved forward. Bilbao familiarized me with this idea of conflict, creativity of conflict. I really believe that oftentimes the most innovative solutions come out of resolving our differences. I left Frank's office after a couple other projects and started my own firm, HansonLA. We are located in downtown Los Angeles and are proud of our local presence, our international and national reach. I have to share a little story with you about the office. I walk extensively, and growing up in the Great Plains, we walk a lot. As architects, we also need to walk and use for our own eyes, get to see the city, the neighbors, the people that we're going to be with, how the sun hits the site, all of those things. So I like to spread the value of walking to the architects in the office. So once a year, the new architects, the young interns, take the 13-mile trek from our office in downtown Los Angeles to Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica. They get out and walk. It's amazing here, you can actually walk to Minnesota and back in a couple hours, which I did already this morning, so I'll have to tell them that story. So what does any of this have to do with the Upper Great Plains? Well, I have to wonder if there isn't an opportunity here. We all know the term flyover states, as if the riches here didn't exist. What do we have here? We have land, we have natural resources, we have a good economy, affordable living, progressive local leaders, international businesses. It's also one of the region's international leader in the agriculture industry and the equipment to sustain that industry. I see by connecting my experiences of the past with those of the present that there might be an opening for the Great Plains. As architects, we are trained to see the found condition, its motivations, its organization, decipher its language. We also want to accentuate those things that give identity and place. I feel that through a collaboration of global expertise and local knowledge, that we can vitalize both the local and the global. We can create an architecture that is of the Upper Great Plains. And to vitalize the local, we need to add meaning and find places that are unfound. To impact the global, we need to take the big and make it small and unique. So I really challenge all of us to work together, architects, creative people, institutions, local government, state government, to really find a place to make a difference here in the Upper Great Plains, but also make it with a global impact. Thank you for your time.